Hey, guess what? It's way too early in the morning. It's Saturday. I'm here with my good friend Dewey Freeman. I'm Mark Sylvester. We're the elders in the nation. Dewey, good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir, and good morning, gentlemen.
You were up
Welcome.
way early because you're feeding the horses, right? That's part of what you do.
Yeah, it's interesting. I get up usually about five-ish and come up and do a sit. And then sometimes it's inside. Most of the time I try and make it outside when it's more than 10 degrees out. And yeah, and then I feed and do my morning routine. And I can happily tell you that the horses are fed and they're happy and healthy. And
I
they
love
all
it.
say good morning.
Good morning to the horses. I've got my kitties all around here, which are as big as horses. They'll tell you,
I know.
20-pound cats is a joy, I must tell you. Well, so I love this show and how it gets me a reason to talk about the things that are big and important, and um, that we might be thinking about as men. And one of the things that has hit me, and this has been on my wall. I've got a glass wall right here and a white marker that I use, and I write on it incessantly. There's one thing though that I wrote a couple years ago that I'd heard, and it made so much sense to me. I've not erased it, and I thought it would be really good to talk about today. And so, guys, if you're listening, and even you do, if you want to draw this down, and then it gives us something to talk about, because I found it was a little distracting to me when I was drawing while we were talking. I found myself not being present. So what I want you to do is I want you to just
Grabbing a
draw.
pen.
Got a pen? I just want you to draw 3 circles. 1, 2, 3. And what we're going to talk about today is human potential, because I think we have this running theme. Last week we were talking about the stories we tell, and that was something we'd also talked about in our second episode. And the stories we tell, like you're not living up to your potential, or I have not reached my true potential, and it's something like that. So your 3 circles, one circle, the first one says mass. So this is a little bit of like science class. And the second circle says velocity. So, and put a little plus sign in between mass and velocity. And then the third circle says momentum. So mass plus velocity equals momentum. Now, so I just want to set the table so we can see that. So this is a familiar, whether you took physics or chemistry or any science class, you understand this idea that I have a thing and it's got some amount of velocity to it, which gives it momentum. And this idea of potential is how far could I go, as opposed to how far am I going?
Right.
That's the distinction. I think it's important, because the how far could I go is just antithetical to how I see life. I'm just I want to be present. So how far could I go is a future statement and has judgment attached to it. We talked about judgment last week. I think this, I'm laying out my hypothesis, and then doctor, you're gonna take me to school. As opposed to momentum, which is how far am I going? And I can be
Right.
really present in that, and I can actually feel the momentum. Someone reminded me of the work by it's a Croatian name, so I'll butcher it. But he wrote the book on flow in the 60s. So you feel that. Now I'm going to explain it just a little bit more, and then I think we'll get into the discussion. So in this context, because science, it's hard to attach the science to me. So let's explain what it means. So mass are your traits. What makes you you? That's the
Okay.
mass of you. That's what are your traits? What do you bring to the table? Just what's in your DNA. You're optimistic, you're curious, you're likable. It's just all this stuff. People have been telling you you're this since you were 7. That's who you are. Velocity is your skills and your experiences. Velocity is that stuff that plus the mass is what are you doing? Like what I went to, I mean, I didn't know how to be a carpenter, but I took a class. I didn't know how to be a wood carver. I took a class. I didn't know how to be a chef. I fumbled around the kitchen. I took some classes. So I have skills and experience, which gives me the velocity. What are you doing? Momentum then is okay. If those two things together, where are you going? Where's the projectile? What's the path? How are you going and getting there? So I want to just start there and see. I've been speechifying for a little bit, and I'll let you talk.
Well, actually, the first thing that comes to mind is talking a bit about velocity. What's that mean to you? I'll tell you why I'm asking in a minute.
So in this example, it's skills and experiences, and that when I was younger, I didn't have, I wasn't going as fast as I'm going now. I right now in my life at 67 years old, I'm going faster than I ever have in my life. And one would say physically, I'm not capable as going as fast as I was when I was a cross country runner at 16. But the accumulated skills and experiences I have of multiple jobs, multiple careers, multiple entrepreneurial wins, multiple wives, multiple things.
Hope it's not multiple wives all at the same time.
No, I don't live in Utah. So so that's in this context, that's what that means to me. And you must know, in the nation, we all have named our year, right? That's a thing that we do in the nation. We name our
Mm-hmm.
year. What's Mark's year 2021 named?
Marks? I don't know.
Velocity, as it turns
Ah,
out. It's
as
a
it turns
trigger
out.
word for me.
Well, what the, that's that's really cool. Um, Part of the reason I asked that is that velocity, from a physics standpoint, actually requires movement.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and what's interesting is many times measurement of movement is movement in relationship to something else. And in fact, as I think about it, it's probably always in relationship to something else. What strikes me about this and it is that we actually have to have movement
Mm-hmm.
to, and what's interesting about that to me is, and I don't know if this is exactly, well, actually, maybe I do think if it fits into what you brought up around potential is so many people that I speak with and spend time with, many times their statement is, I'm stuck.
Look what I wrote.
No. I don't know. There's that was like a magic trick. That's pretty good. I'm impressed. And And so part of what, and right now I'm just thinking out loud here, part of what happens, I think, when many people speak about being stuck is they don't know what direction they want to go, so therefore they're stuck.
So they don't go anywhere, right?
Right. And clearly this is not the first time, nor will it be the last time that I will bring in horse analogies. Many times when we're working or riding a horse, working with or riding a horse, we ask for movement before we ask for direction.
Yeah, take a step, then make it the right one.
Right. Take a step, and it might be to the left, even though we want to go straight. It might be to the left, it might be to the right, it actually might be a circle, but movement is incredibly important. And part of what we look at is movement is speed, direction, and destination. But for any of those with horsemanship, with any of those, all of those require movement.
And back to being stuck, we're stuck typically because, well, there's a million reasons, but like I don't know what to do next, or I'm afraid to take a step, or
Mm-hmm.
I'm afraid of taking the wrong step, or I can't. I
I
mean,
do
there's
something wrong.
all
Right.
all those stories that we're telling ourselves, and yet I will tell you that in our house, when there is an anxious moment, of which in life we have anxious moments, um, what do I say? We get up and we walk. The first thing we do when we hit that wall of anxiety, or I'm not sure what to do, I just go outside, literally just take a walk around the block. We live on a hill. It's a 10-minute walk to get around the block.
Mm-hmm.
And it's free. You don't have to pay anything. It's free.
Right.
And it is a psychological miracle what happens to you when you take a step. My TED talk was about the fifth step in my how do you overcome overwhelm is take a step, commit to taking the next one.
Okay.
Right? The taking the one, okay, come on, balls on the table, man up, take a step.
Right.
Okay, good. I took my step. Am I done? No.
Nope.
Commit, know that you're going to have the next one, which gets back to you're never going to reach your potential. You're never going to feel momentum if you're not moving, to your point. Now let's remind our listener, you're actually an authority in physics, aren't you?
Well, I don't know if I'd go that
Okay,
far.
so you're
I
educated.
Yes, I'm part of my first degree and first schooling was physics. That
So
was 50 years ago. I've forgotten more than I learned. Um, but yes, I know a little bit about it. I know enough to be dangerous.
so so let's deconstruct this more on the notion of mass. Do you feel like you have a sense of your mass, your traits, your innate, what you bring to the table in any situation that's just what makes you you?
Yes, I feel like I have.
Do
Do
you
you?
feel most people do?
Well, actually, that this is like a little bit mind blowing. That question. No one's actually ever asked me that in that way. Um, the answer is yes. And a huge part of that answer has to do with being able to be in your body,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to figure out who you are and even what your traits are.
Mm-hmm. And to be
And
comfortable with that.
right. Even, for instance, if one of my traits is creativity, or one of my traits is strength, or one of my traits is that I actually don't give up. Probably should give up sometimes that I don't, but but to have and own those traits, I have to be in my body. So part of what we're doing here, I think, Mark, is this overlap and intertwining of somatic process with all of the other traits that we think are out there that we're going to achieve. It's like people can say, yeah, I want to be creative. Well, how do you be creative? You walk.
Mm-hmm.
People want to say, I want to be sensitive. How do you be sensitive? You breathe.
Also
Maybe
motion.
you breathe in. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I've not said this way before.
How come you say that every week?
Oh, because I make shit up as we go along. That's my job. Well, let me.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but what's interesting about these Saturdays is that we're through these conversations, we're touching places we've not touched before or have not touched in a long time, or we're making associations and connections that were nascent and now we're calling them into being.
The reason I say that is because you and I, as brothers, as friends, have momentum.
You're correct.
And it's that momentum that helps create that newness, that new perspective, a new door to come into. And so what's happening is, from our relationship creates a new process and new velocity, new mass, new momentum.
So
that's actually not what I was going to say. I forget what I was going to say now. But
so let's go back to traits and what makes you you. There is what you think your traits are, and then an exercise that we did years ago, which is to write to 10 friends and say, give me 3 words that you would use to describe me to someone else. And then you'll get an outside subjective, but still you'll get, there's the what you think you are, and then there's the how you're perceived out in the world by those who
and how you're experienced in the world.
Yeah. Which is a very interesting, I would challenge anybody that wants to do that. It's very, very illuminating to see what other people think about you. And specifically the phrasing is, how would you introduce me to someone else? Mark is dun-dun, dun-dun, dun-dun.
So let's say that you did that, and I know you did that at some point. When you get all of that information around traits, both your inner traits, how you perceive yourself, and then you're asking how others perceive you. When you get that, what do you do with it? Because I'm asking this specifically because what we do with that information directly affects our perception of our potential.
1000%. because it's one half of the equation.
Right.
Right. What do
Well,
you bring into the table?
and we might get one of those three things that people give us feedback on. I mean, like, let's say we asked 10 people for three pieces of information on that level that you just spoke about. That's 30 pieces of information. Chances are not all of them are going to be positive if people are being honest with you.
My experience was that they were positive because of the frame, which is how would you introduce them to someone else? Now, because I might not introduce someone to someone else saying, he's really creative and he's fucking intelligent. He's a bit of a dick, though. I probably wouldn't say that.
Why? He's a bit of a dick. He's a really big dick. Well, what I'm thinking, it doesn't even, because part of what I'm trying to get to here is perception is incredibly important.
Oh, what did they say? Perception is reality?
Yeah. And so it might be that someone says, I'm intelligent, I'm creative, and I'm stubborn.
Yeah.
Or I'm intelligent and I'm creative, and I don't know. I get stuck in a certain process. I'm making this up, but it's also probably true. But how we perceive that and what we do with that information can either help us toward our potential, or it could inhibit us moving toward our potential.
So with that being said, it's kind of like here we go. You were dealt a hand. We're playing 3-card poker, and you're dealt a hand. And there's your 3 cards. The dealer gave them to, and he knew these were the best cards. These are your traits. This is the hand you're dealt. That's the fates gave you that. I woke up and I got a little of my mom and a little of my dad and a little of my grandpa and my grandma, and I'm 13th generation landed in a boat after the Mayflower. So I got probably a drop or two of that in me as well.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm looking at the cards. Those are the cards. I can't. Those are straight up. Those are the cards. I wish I had 3 aces. I didn't get 3 aces. I got a 4, a 6, and a queen. That's what I got. And so I think the realization of that is very good for us as soon as we can in life to know what cards you got, and then say, man, I need a couple of aces, which is where velocity comes in, which is where your skills and experiences come in, and said, I know I need to go get a couple of aces. I need to be better at writing. I need to be better at something. Okay. Watch a dang YouTube video. Go take a class. Listen to one of the people on the nation. That's how you get the velocity, because you're now I'm playing gin rummy and I have 13 cards in my hand.
Right, exactly. Well, and God, I love this analogy. So I didn't get 3 aces. I got a 4, 6, and a queen.
Yeah.
But if I'm sitting there going, I can't do anything because I didn't get 3 aces.
Oh, yeah. See, what the fuck is that?
I can't. Right. I can't. It's like, damn.
So what do? Fold?
Yeah. Or
you fold at 22. Well,
yeah,
I didn't get the cards.
Exactly.
I'm out.
Exactly. Or you go, okay, this is what I was dealt. What am I going to do with it? And that, I think, also is part of the velocity.
Yeah.
Because it's what am I going to do with what I got?
What are you doing?
So, yeah, like
act as if you got 3 aces. How many people do you know in life that act like they got three aces and they're holding two twos and a three.
Exactly.
But
Or all of different suits. And but it's also like athletically, on a scale of 1 to 10, I've pretty much always been a 7.
mm,
Like a couple of areas I've excelled higher than a 7, but I ski raced. I did Nordic skiing and ski raced. I done a bunch of triathlons, a bunch of marathons, a bunch of rock climbing, a
and
bunch of
you're
blah
only a
blah blah blah
seven? That makes me a three.
blah. Well, there are many things I'm a 3 in. Just so you know,
I'm not comparing my cards. I'm just saying.
right? And though, and it's like I could go. Shit, I'm only a 7.
Or
And now
fuck, I'm a
9.
7.
Yeah, exactly. Or I can go in these areas, I'm a 3. In these areas, I'm a 5.5. These areas, I'm a 7. And these areas, I can be a 9. And what am I going to do with those? So the perception and the perception of what we're doing with what we got is such a big deal.
It's probably a bigger deal than we're making of it now that I think about it.
Well, yeah. And so again, I'm thinking out loud here. What is your perspective? I sort of cheated. I said, I'm thinking out loud and I'm asking you a question. What's your perspective of perception, of how perception affects velocity and skills?
So if it feels like if you have an unrealistic appreciation of the cards in your hand, we're going to just go with that. You think you have three aces and you just don't. Um, so that's going to affect, like, why do I need to study? Why do I need to take classes? Why do I need to have any kind of professional development plan? Why do I need to have we call it around here, it's called a personal learning plan. Like, what's the
Mm-hmm.
personal
Mm-hmm.
learning plan that you're on?
Sure.
What do you want to have learned this year? What is the new thing you want to
Mm-hmm.
bring on? If you go, well, I know all that, I don't need it. So we'll add arrogance as one of the cards you have, and that's not going to help you at all. The more realistic you can be about that assessment of who you are, good, bad, and ugly, knowing what cards you have are going to directly affect what you do about it. Whether how do you leverage that? There's a site called howtofascinate.com. A branding expert, Sally Hogshead, um, looked at how she evaluated brands and found that there was a perfect crossover to how you evaluated human traits. And
Really?
so, yeah, and her thing is, you take this test. It's like $25, and it tells you, there are these 7 archetypes that map out to 49 different variants of
Mm-hmm.
who
Mm-hmm.
you are as a person. It's a personality type of test, but it is based on how others perceive you. It's not how you
Mm-hmm.
perceive yourself. It's how others
Got it.
perceive you. So that once you know that, you can double down on that and use that to your advantage. So now if I know I'm this way, then I'm going to lean into being that way because that helps me. Or I'm going to say, gosh, I'm timid. Maybe my hidden strength is the thing that my shadow strength is like, yes, I'm all of this stuff, but secretly I'm an introvert. So I'm never going to get to. So if you have a clear eyed view and understanding of that, you can say, you know, I'm going to work on that. I'm not just going to go to your point. Yep, I'm an introvert. That's how I am. And I just don't know. No, as opposed to, huh, okay, certain situations make me uncomfortable. I'll stay away from those. And other ones I'm ambivalent about. Okay, you know what? I'm actually what Susan Cain describes as an ambivert. And once you understand that, you're like, oh, and which brings me back to fear is when I don't know something. I am fearful because I don't know. And if you don't know who you are, you're going to be afraid. If you don't really know who you are, I'm afraid to do that thing. I don't know if I have what it takes. I am
Right.
afraid. I haven't looked at my cards yet, so I'm not going to make a bet. You know, the guys that peek and they don't know, and they just
Hmm.
bet blind. Yeah,
Hmm.
I put my money out there. I don't know how far this analogy will go if we got another 15 minutes of it,
Yeah.
but
Well,
it works.
it does. So, one of the pieces around thousands of things are coming up here. One of the pieces around what I think, and I'm going to take a little bit of a tangent, and if it's too much, call me back. Part of human potential is based on competency,
Okay.
at
Yep.
least from
Sure.
my
Sure.
perspective.
Sure.
One of the things that is, and I mean, this next thing I'm going to say is true. I have never in my professional career, I've never advertised.
You've never
And
advertised.
no, back, when there were yellow pages, they give you a little half-inch block.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And now I mean, Kimberly's been kind enough to put together a website for me, but I've looked at that maybe twice in a year, and it's enough information that people can contact me if they want. But I don't do advertisement. I don't put a bunch of stuff out on Facebook, and I just don't do that. Part of the reason I believe I've been successful is because of competency. I mean, my perspective of advertising is being competent. And one of the things I'm seeing, and I think this totally fits into this potential piece, and I'm seeing this with young therapists, is maybe they'll graduate from a master's degree, they've been out in the world a year or two, but their level and skill at advertising, at marketing, on social medias, on, um, mostly social medias, but other, electronic ways of advertising, is that they put themselves out at being confident in things that they're not. I see that
They're
smile.
they're digital natives, so that's their go-to. We're digital immigrants, and it's not our go-to.
Right.
And what I'm thinking about, and I'm going to save this whole chunk for next week, which is
Okay.
the idea of conscious competence,
Exactly.
unconscious competence. I think we can take that. I'll do some research. I'll do some reading on that, so that we can chat about that. I think that would be a good deep dive because that's its own thing. That feeling. If you're unconscious I'm going to save it. I'm not even going to go there. I'm going to save it. We'll tease it for next week.
So here's the tease, because there's two other parts of that.
Yes. Yep.
There's the unconscious incompetence,
Yep.
conscious incompetence, conscious competence, unconscious competence.
Yep.
So there it is, gentlemen. That's where we'll be next week.
So let's go back to what you were saying about, and I think it's what we said at the very beginning. You said these young therapists think they're all that and they're not that yet. And it's because they don't have velocity yet, which they don't have a lot of skills and experiences under their belt yet. So their momentum. So if we add their skills and then their schooling, they don't have really enough. The momentum isn't really. They're just getting going.
Well, I think what I was trying to say is that we can have mass and velocity that equals momentum. Now I'm going to talk about the mass. If that mass is not competent, then the momentum stalls, potential
100%.
stalls.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a concern of mine, because one, I feel bad for people, and because it's a real bummer for them to go, yeah, I got this, and they sell themselves, and then it's like, okay, I've sold myself, but I can't deliver fully. And so that stops momentum. But the other part is that piece, and where my mind was going with this is, how do we train ourselves? How do we educate ourselves? How do we put in the time to get ourselves to a place of being confident? And the analogy that I use is, and I'm writing a whole piece on training our nervous system, is that I'm like halfway through. But it's like in martial arts, we actually train ourselves to be able to be hit.
Yes.
Or we train ourselves to be able to be thrown on the mat.
Yep.
Not because those are always super fun things to have happen, but
we're doing break fall practice this evening, ladies and gentlemen, and we're just going to fall and hit the ground face first.
Right.
So you know what it feels like.
Well, and so that when that happens, we don't lose our ground.
Right.
So that we don't lose our mass and or velocity.
Which is the, what are you doing to, again, that gets back to the training. Like, what kind of training things are you doing? Are you doing stuff to shore up your weak hand? Or are you doing things to accentuate and sharpen, stay with martial arts for a second? Part of it is, gosh, like, why do you continue to study, Mark? Is because, man, that blade can never be sharp enough. It doesn't need much, right? Just a little bit. Or I need a new sword. That's completely different. I was like, I don't even have a sword. I got a bow staff. It's not going to cut anybody, right? I can only do certain things with a bow staff. But if I have a sword, that's a different thing. But just knowing, oh, I could get a sword. I think that's part of that, because I want to have more momentum. I need more tools.
Exactly. And exactly. And going in and beginning the training is allow yourself to start at the beginning. Like yes. I'm not going to get in the ring with Traeger. I'm just not going to do it.
I've seen his pictures.
Well, I might get into a ring, and if we have an agreement that I'll learn from him. But I mean, Traeger's like friggin' top notch of this stuff.
Yeah. He's been in the octagon.
Exactly. And but that's the piece. That's the, I'm in a week, I'm doing a 3-day immersion into a keto training, like all day long, each day. But it's like, but I don't have the level of competency that someone like Traeger has. But it doesn't mean that I can't get there. It just means that I need to start where I'm at and really acknowledge that, and not pretend like I'm something that I'm not. um, because that also interrupts momentum. And what I'm aware of is actually through this talk, I'm pointing out numbers of things that interrupt momentum, therefore interrupting potential. So I don't know, thought just hit me.
Well,
Go ahead.
that
What were you
that's
going
it.
to say,
That's
Mark?
it. Well, it's exactly it. I keep going back to the, we all got dealt a hand, right? Genetically, we
Right.
were dealt a hand, and that's it. Unless you're going to go do some gene therapy or some deep other therapy, just like love the one you're with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Love the one you're with. That's you,
Exactly.
right? Love the one you're
Exactly.
with, right? And that feels super easy for me to say. I'm 67. I've been through that crucible a few times. Like, who the fuck are you? And do you like that guy who just was a total asshole or a total dick? Like, that's obviously in you to be that guy. I was a chef early in my career till I was 30, and I prided myself on being able to bring a waitress to tears. Like, what the fuck is that? Like, nothing good about that. And I thought that was good, right? Because I'm the chef. I can be Gordon Ramsay in a second. That's not good, right? Once you learn that, you go, oh wait, I don't have to be that way. I'm working on a project right now, and I'm dealing with new software that's very complex, and I love to learn new things. It's very complex, and I'm having to deal with their support people, and thankfully they're 24/7. So at 11:30 last night, I'm dealing with this lovely person who's I can talk, and I said, am I not getting it, or is it just not right? Or and I know, because I work with support, I ran support, I'm going to be so nice to this lady, because and I'm going to empower her with superpowers to help me. Oh my gosh, she is there to help me, and I am convinced she's going to solve this problem. And then when she can't, it's not her fault. And I write a really nice letter afterwards. And guess what? I had VPs working for me yesterday. VPs, like, oh, this, because I was super nice. So it was the dickish Mark before 30, and the
It was
no,
a
that's not how
polarity.
you get anything done.
Mm-hmm.
Work on that, again, my little side trip. Sorry, but you
No,
don't need
no,
to
that's
be that,
perfect.
right?
Well, it sounds like part of what you're saying is, and I don't know whether it would be, metaphorically the mass or the velocity, but part of what you're saying is to reach our potential, we have to be relational.
Yeah.
We have to be supportive. We have to be kind, inquisitive, looking deeply into where we're competent, where we're not, looking deeply into what we need help with, looking deeply into where and how we can be creative, and looking deeply into literally training ourselves to learn so that we can learn.
Boy, that was that last one. Training ourselves to learn so we can learn. That's such a perfect button to this conversation, because it's the realization and the openness. And my experience with the men I've met in the nation is that everybody is sincerely trying to figure it the fuck out,
Exactly.
and know that we're not, but know that there's a lot of support from everyone around.
Mm-hmm.
A very supportive environment, very genuine environment, and guys really kind of coming to the table saying, being honest with themselves, and maybe for the first time, which is fantastic, right? And that's what we're encouraging is, um, th- go do this. Get 10 of your friends to honestly and candidly say what are the three things, the three words they would use, or the three phrases they would use to introduce you to a good friend of theirs. And take that all in and look at that and own that, because
Exactly.
whether you agree with it or not, it is their reality. And it may be that you show up and you are unconscious about that, which is unconscious competence, which we're going to talk about next week, which would be a perfect example of that. Wouldn't you say, Professor?
That would be a perfect example.
Dewey, I love these Saturday conversations. I tell you, I can't get enough. If there was all Saturdays in the week, we would talk every day, but there aren't. There's only one. So we're going to have to wait until next week until we talk again.
Well, thank you so very much. And all of you who are members of the nation and those who are in relationship with you, let yourself learn, let yourself be humble, let yourself move, let yourself move toward your potential.
Boom.